to have all the old school coaches gone. Jacob Hebert here for NFL World. Going to break this down for you. This all started with Tom Izzo, who's a legendary coach in college basketball for Michigan State. They asked him a question, the media did, like, why do you yell at your players? And he says, that's the way I coach. And they understand that. And he goes on this long soliloquy of players now aren't doing that anymore. Players, they think the coach doesn't like them. They think I'm getting screamed at all the time, therefore I'm doing something wrong. And so therefore I'm going to transfer out of here to a coach that is all lovey-dovey. And that's how they operate. And they don't just operate like that in college basketball, but in every sport, including the NFL. It's the same thing. You get traded because you tell your agent, I don't want to be here. Coach yells at me all the time. That's coaching. Which you have to marvel at some of those players who understand that. They're like, no, it's coaching. We get it. It makes us better. And I thought about that, and I was like, is there any old school coaches left in the NFL? Is there any? There has to be, right? There has to be. And I came back with maybe one, and he's not really old school. He's kind of blended in a way. And that goes to Sean Payton, because he coached under Bill Parcells. You have to understand, back in the 70s, back in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s, those coaches were around. Chuck Noll, Tom Landry, Bill Parcells, Bill Walsh, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher, Marty Schottenheimer, Bill Belichick. All those coaches were around. Now they are not. And I think it made the league worse. And I think it affected college sports as well, because you don't have those coaches at those programs. You just don't have enough of those old school coaches who are going to scream at you, who are going to yell at you. Not to make you upset, but to make you better, to teach you to understand what they're trying to talk about, what they're talking about. It's not, they don't have anything against you personally. But that's the way it is. That's the way everyone thinks. Oh, it's a vendetta against me. It's not. It's just, I'm teaching you, I'm going to coach you hard, and so you understand. Because when you go to the post, that's what you're going to learn. You're going to be coached really hard, and you're going to be pushed to a breaking point, and you're going to get pushed to another breaking point, and you're going to be pushed to another breaking point. You're going to learn, you're going to be stretched very thin and brought back together again. Stretched really thin again and brought back together again. That is the way it works in the NFL. That's the way it works in sports in general. But when he brought that up, when Tom Izzo brought that up, I thought about it. Who, like all the great coaches now, that's who they are. You go into the NFL, and Andy Reid, players coach. Mike Tomlin for years was a players coach. Sean Payton is kind of a blend, like we said before. Old school and new school. Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, both players coaches. So every one of those coaches had tremendous success. I'm not denying that. I'm saying from a pure perspective, are they the Bill Parcells of the world? Are they the Bill Belichicks of the world? Are they the Tom Landrys, the Chuck Knowles of the world, the Don Shulers of the world? No. Not because those guys aren't still around, but because the way they taught, the way they teached in general was different. That was a different thing. And you can go all the way back to being in the league with Lombardi, Red Grange back in the day. Like, that's how they taught. And that's because that was brought over from the college game. Everyone was kind of grouped in the military style, and that's how they taught. Now, everyone's like, oh, let's bring a wedding. And it wasn't that none of these coaches had personality. They just didn't want to show it. They didn't want to give a team an advantage, as they used to say, bulletin board material, even though no one knows what a bulletin board is anymore. What they were trying to do was to make sure the other team didn't know anything. It wasn't that everyone looked at Belichick and they said he was mean to the media. He wasn't. He tolerated the media, but he also spoke in front of the media more than anybody. Because how it works is you have media availability. You don't have to do it. You have to do essentially 2 to 3 days a week. Belichick was doing it closer to 4 or 5 days a week. He didn't have to. He never had to. But he did it anyway. He liked it but it was like he tolerated it, yes, but he liked it too. That's how he did it. But you had to answer questions that he didn't want to answer. He didn't want to give anything away. He didn't want to create bulletin board material. That's the difference. Now we have all these coaches that are willing to say whatever. They don't care. They're like, we can still be better than you, which is a good mentality to have. But at the end of the day, that's not how the old school coaches were. And it's not just the NFL. Go into the NBA, go into college basketball, go into college football, go into any sport you want. Tell me if there's an old. There's not many. There's very few of them because those guys aren't around anymore. I think the best example of a most recent coach who was like that in the NBA was Greg Popovich. Was Coach Pop because he was that old school guy because he was an older guy. And this is how you fix it. This is how you fix it. You go and you hire some older assistants. Outside of Mike McCarthy getting hired, every new head coach was a younger guy. That was it. That was pretty much what it was. And we didn't have a great coaching class, but it was just in terms of who was going to get hired or anything like that. But that's pretty much what it was. Younger guy, intelligent guy, but that's who they went with. They went with younger, popular, and more of a wait and see guy instead of a proven guy. What we need to see is coaches who are proven, who are like, okay, yeah, let's give them a head coaching opportunity again, or they haven't been a head coach before, so let's give them one. Let's have him be the head coach. They don't do that. You don't see those guys very often. And I think that would help the sport and for what I'm talking about. Don't get me wrong, I think the sport is great. Don't get me wrong. I think all the sports are great. I think that kind of edge would help the leagues, but I don't think we have that anymore. And the reason I brought up, well, the players can leave, but they can get transferred because in college basketball, in college in general, you have what is called NIL, name, image, and likeness. That is the reason, a very good reason, a lot of people say this, that Nick Saban retired. A lot of these old school coaches retired because they can teach you so much and they might teach you in their way. But if they're not kind to you, they're not saying, hey, how's the family? How's this? How's that? Publicly, then all these players leave. They say, no, I'm going somewhere else. And in the old school days, you would get transferred. You lose a year of eligibility because you basically got redshirted. And because you couldn't play. Now you get transferred, you can play the next year. That's it. You can play the upcoming year. You can do that. And you can get money from the NIL. And in all major sports, you're still getting paid anyway, and you're not redshirted if you get traded. So old school coaches retire. They just retire. That's just it's an effect. It's an ineffective way to talk about sport. But I think by putting an edge on that causes some negative impact because all those older school coaches had their finger on the pulse on everything. And now it's, I want to be this guy's friend and not his coach. The great way of saying it before we go is you can't be, if you're in management, but you were friends with them before, you can't be friends and be the boss. There has to be a line somewhere. And I think the NFL, the NBA, the national sports in general, and college sports in general all have that issue. The bosses want to be the friend, not the boss.